Salut from Paris.
Coucou.
We're Lena.
And Laurent.
And we're here in the Jardin du Luxembourg. And we will take you with us today on a walk through the Latin Quarter, which is actually one of the oldest areas in Paris that dates back to the Romans 2000 years ago. And it's as well the student quarter where you find the famous Sorbonne University, the Collège de France, and many more higher education establishments. And as you can see, we picked the perfect day to go for a walk in Paris because the weather is just wonderful. It's really like spring. The sun is out, the sky is blue. I personally think it's quite warm and agreeable. Laurent is rather complaining that he's freezing.
It's a bit chill. It's a bit chilly.
So what is our plan for today, Laurent?
So the starting point is the Jardin du Luxembourg, where we are at right now. And then a street away from here, we're going to go to the Panthéon, the famous monument, and we're going to show you around on the Place des Grands Hommes, Rue Soufflot, etc. And afterwards, we're going to go and move on to the Rue Descartes and then the Rue Mouffetard. Actually, the same street, but it changes name in the middle. And that's it. On the way, we're going to show you restaurants and bars and stores and just nice buildings. So let's go.
All right, let's go. The Jardin du Luxembourg is located in the 6th arrondissement and exists since the early 17th century. It was created by Marie de Médicis, who was the wife of King Henry IV, so Henri IV, and with it also the Queen of France. She was originally from Florence in Italy and wanted a palace and a garden that resembled the one she grew up in. So she built the Palais de Luxembourg and with it the beautiful gardens. Even though the park underwent many transformations over the centuries, some features are still dating back to Marie. The most famous one is the Medici fountain right next to the palace. Behind me, you see the Panthéon. This massive monument stands on top of the Montagne Sainte-Geneviève. That's why you can easily spot it in the skyline of Paris. It was built under Louis XV, who intended it to be a church. But at the time the Pantheon was finished, he was long dead, and the French Revolution had started. So everything that was planned by kings and queens was rather unpopular. So the newly created government decided to transform it into a hall of honors for notable French men and women. The first person who got the honor was Voltaire, followed by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. In total, 83 people are buried here today, 76 men and 7 women. The latest additions are Mélanie Manoukian and her husband Mishaak Manoukian. Both were survivors of the Armenian genocide in 1915 and fought later in the French resistance against the Nazis during the Second World War.
Let's continue. Just a few steps away from the Panthéon, you have the Église Saint-Étienne-du-Mont. It's a Gothic church that dates back to 1492, and maybe you have never heard of this church, but if you've seen the movie Midnight in Paris, you might recognize these steps. Here we are on the Placette Jacqueline de Romilly, but no one knows this place by its real name. It's known as La Place Sainte-Geneviève. You have many pubs and bars. It's a great place to have a few beers and just to spend the evening with friends. You also have many restaurants that aren't very expensive but quite good. One of our favorite is Tran Tran Zai. It's Chinese noodles dishes from the Sichuan region. Beware, it can be quite spicy.
From the pubs and bars, we continue to walk down the slopes of Montagne Sainte-Geneviève and for now, following Rue Descartes. In the early 20th century, many famous writers were living in the area. For example, Ernest Hemingway, but also George Orwell and James Joyce lived just around the corner as well.
Around here, there's a restaurant that we do like a lot. It's called Naro, and it's located on Rue Cardinal Lemoine. It's a French restaurant, but the cook is Japanese, and he creates really original dishes that are mostly French gastronomy, but with a few influences here and there from his native country. The mix of everything is what we call in French something like bistronomie, which is food from the bistros but elevated as a gastronomical level.
Rue Mouffetard is one of the oldest streets in Paris. It dates back to the Romans more than 2000 years ago. It was a street that, if you'd followed it to the end, would lead you first to Lyon and then all the way back to Rome. I would say that today the Rue Mouffetard is one of the nicest streets in Paris. And I think it's very evident why. It has such a nice medieval vibe, with the cobblestones and the narrow lanes and the houses that are all a bit askew. The Rue Mouffetard stands in a big contrast to the big impressive Haussmann buildings that you find everywhere else in Paris. The reason for this is that Baron Haussmann, who remodeled Paris in the 19th century and created all the pretty boulevards, spared the Latin Quarter. The location was just not practical for his plans because the Rue Mouffetard and the streets close to it were on a hill. Rue de Pot de Fer is a little pedestrian street perpendicular to the Rue Mouffetard, and here you find as well many restaurants and bars. It's very busy in the evenings and on the weekend, and it's probably the most touristy part of the Rue Mouffetard. On the angle, you find this weird-looking building that is actually a fountain that exists since 1624. Can you imagine? And on the same building, you even have a very beautiful Space Invader. You find these little artworks all over Paris, and if you have the app Flash Invaders, you can collect them. We told you already about Restaurant Naru, but if you are more on a budget, Petit Grec is a great option to have lunch. And it's definitely junk food, but it's really good, it's cheap, and you can be sure not to be hungry afterwards. The upper part of the Rue Mouffetard is packed with restaurants and little shops. But if you walk all the way down, the street turns more and more into a market street. You find here butchers, chocolatiers, fruit vendors, cheesemongers, boulangeries, and plenty of stores where you can find just the most delicious things. From Tuesday to Sunday mornings, you find on the Square Saint-Médard as well an outdoor market with many stalls where you can buy fresh products. It's right by the church Église Saint-Médard.